Hi, this is Buck Moore, and I'm just doing a follow-up video to the live sound video I posted on YouTube about setting up and equalizing sound systems and ringing out. And the reason I'm doing this is because there's similar questions being asked by people, and thank you very much for asking intelligent questions. That's great, so we can have a little bit of a conversation and discourse. Number one, I don't recommend anybody follow one person's advice 100%. You should, gather as much information as possible from different people doing the gig, people that have experience in the field. The reason I'm putting this video up was really because of a comment I got, which was by a supposedly 20-year-old electrical engineer who basically was saying that, I don't want to go through the whole thing, but basically a couple of points that he put out was the concept of ringing out a system is not an effective way of tuning a room at all. Well, I disagree. I just simply disagree. Sorry, I feel it is a valid way of ringing out a system. The SM58 doesn't have a flat response. I know that, but the SM58 is a very popular and very robust microphone that can handle a live stage. If a microphone can't handle a few drops and kicks and punches, and I don't want it on the stage. The SM58 has never failed me. I can't say that about a lot of other microphones, but the SM58 personally is a great reference. And that's all we're trying to do here is use a reference. So reference would be natural sounding dialogue through a sound system. That's the reference I'm going for. So he goes on to say, if you plan on doing this for real, you will invest in a real measurement microphone. We're not using a measurement microphone or an RTA system with pink noise, not for this. You cannot rely on tools, but I'll get to that, so I don't want to go on about this. And he goes, please read up on this and learn how to truly tune a live sound system. Okay, so just a little bit of history about myself before I go on. I'm not bragging or anything, I'm just telling it how it is, but basically I don't have a degree, all right? I didn't go to school formally to learn this stuff. I've been teaching it for over 10 years because I got into the world of setting up bands and sound systems, and I ended up setting up and mixing over 4,000 live events. That means microphones being tuned over 4,000 times. I stopped counting at 4,000. There's no point anymore. I wrote several articles for major publications, including Mix Magazine and Onstage Magazine under the company Prime Media. So you can look that up. Go to mixonline.com and just, do a search for my name, Buck Moore, and my articles would come up. Onstage Magazine, I'm not sure what happened to them, but anyway, they're still there for Mix, and people have used them and whatever. But I've also been a performer for over 25 years. I know what a stage should sound like a nice, clean, relatively balanced musicians on stage with their amplifiers. I know what it should sound like. So I'm on both sides of the fence quite often. So, I got quite a history. That's all I'm saying. I developed a way of doing things based on observing other people, maybe going through some of my favorite books, like a Master Handbook of Acoustics, or a Handbook for Sound Engineers, which is like an encyclopedia, Sound Reinforcement Handbook, Architectural Acoustics. Yeah, I read this stuff, and I take little tidbits of information like I have been doing over the years, but nothing replaces going out and actually doing the gig, right? So here's a few questions I'd like to address. Number one, is it safe to tap a dynamic microphone in a live sound system? Is it safe to tap a dynamic microphone? Yes, it's absolutely safe to tap a dynamic microphone. Like I said, if a microphone couldn't handle a few taps, I don't want it in my sound system. And I think one of the misconceptions is that people think I'm look at this microphone. I'll tap it for hours and there's nothing going to be wrong with this thing because I'm not tapping the actual diaphragm. I'm tapping the bulb of the microphone, which just sends a few vibrations in there. But when I tap the microphone, I actually turn up the preamp gain so the microphone's way more sensitive, so I don't have to hammer on it. I just give it a few taps. How many times have you seen a lead singer before a show starts tap a microphone? Happens quite a bit, okay? People tap microphones all the time. If microphones cannot handle tapping, get them off my stage. That's why I use the SM58. Well, this is not the SM58. This is the RS25. It's my test microphone and my practice microphone when I practice with my band, and I set up the sound system there. Okay. Anyway, the words I use a variety of words in the sound system. Like somebody questioned, which is a fair question, why do you use certain words? Well, I use words like, walk and dog and sheer and nasally, you know, to identify all the different areas of the sound spectrum for humans. You know, 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz roughly. You have 5 major areas. You have a boomy area with all the bass. You have a boxy area with all the low mids, a nasally area with all the mids, a harsh area with all the upper mids, and a piercing area with all the highs. It narrows your problems down. So if you think something sounds harsh, you know you're going to go to the upper mids to try to fix the problem. You know if something sounds boxy, which is often the case with human vocals, you know you're going to go for the lower mids. Okay, so that's why I separate them into 5 areas. And I read a variety of words. I read like tons of different, you know, maybe a book, or I'll read a set list or something with a variety of different sounds so I can hear trends happening as I say it. So that's why I use the words I do. Choose whatever words you want, but those are the ones I use. And I have no shame, so I can say this in, you know, in a room filled with musicians and say all this silly stuff that might sound funny on a system, but I don't really care. Does it make sense to ring out a system from the soundboard position in a club? Yes, absolutely. I want to know what the lead microphone sounds like, or whether it's a lead singer or somebody reading from a book or an MC or a comedian. I want to make sure that microphone where I'm sitting sounds as good as possible. It is a reference point. What I do after that, which I guess I didn't explain well enough in the actual video, is that I go back up on stage, I set all the settings just like the test microphone strip, and I put the microphone in the lead microphone position, and it's stable. Okay, I might have to do some fine-tuning adjustments because, yes, the microphone is closer to the sound system, but remember, when I'm looking at a sound system, ringing it out like this in a perpendicular fashion, when it's on stage, it's actually pointing the opposite way the speakers are. So the gain before feedback is very similar. Trust me, I've done it both ways many, many times, and sometimes I got bored and did it another way. And it doesn't really matter as long as you get the results that you want. For example, in this big book of stuff, I mean, look at all this stuff. There's tons of stuff in this book. It's a great book. 4 of the most important questions I got out of this big fat book was, is the sound system loud enough? Can everybody hear? Can everybody understand? And will it feed back? 4 basic questions. You do not need a real-time analyzer to answer those 4 questions. You need a good set of ears, common sense, and a lot of patience. Okay, moving on. Do you need an RTA to properly tune a sound system? No, you don't. What happens if your RTA software program fails you? Well, what are you going to do? You got to use your ears again, I guess. So it's better to train with your ears than to train with an RTA. RTA can help you find feedback frequencies, and an RTA can also help you identify areas with gross fluctuations that aren't flat. But you know, you put a sound system in a room, a flat sound system like I used years ago, an Eastern Acoustic Works system, very flat sound system. Put that in a room, it's no longer flat anyway. So yeah, you could get it flat at the mixer's position, but it's guaranteed it's not going to remain flat during the show. I mean, you're going to do some, you know, you're going to be like right in the thick of things, making quick decisions about what's going to work and not mess up the rest of the sound during this performance, because once the band gets there, they're going to bring all their own personal, you know, sound issues that you have to deal with. So flat doesn't always mean good. And no, you do not need an RTA. Now, I'd probably use an RTA as a reference point for ringing out a system in a large room where you're, you know, judging high frequency attenuation in the air and the proper listening positions, and maybe where to put delay clusters and fill systems as a reference, but there's no guarantee that it's going to remain flat in a large room. You know, is it flat sound? What is flat sounding anyways? Flat sounding is a good overall reference point for the sound mixer, but nobody else in the room is really going to get a flat sound perfectly. You know, our ears aren't even flat. So I'm using, instead of RTA, I'm using my ears to make it sound like a natural sounding vocal in a large room, basically on a large sound system, and that's a great reference point. Okay, that's my opinion. It's a great reference point to start with. Okay, so you should not use RTA because it is a crutch, and just be careful with that. One guy who was an electrical engineer, the guy I mentioned before, mentioning, oh, you should, you know, get an RTA or whatever, you should get a test microphone or whatever. Well, we're not singing through test microphones, so a test microphone is only going to tell you so much. Why don't you put a real microphone with a real voice in its sound system and tune it and see what it sounds like? So just being an electrical engineer doesn't mean, you know, you're a musician or you're a sound mixer. It means you're really good with numbers and math and science, and everything becomes so technical. But the thing about live sound mixing is it's only half technical. The other half is artistic. I know lots of great successful sound engineers who really only know the artistic side of carving the EQ out of a sound system to balance it, and others who know diodes and the proper percentage of bandwidth of a constant percentage bandwidth filter, equalizer, whatever, and the summing buses and all. They know all the math, but they don't necessarily get a great mix. And then there are others who kind of do both. So just being an engineer doesn't really cover all bases. You got to have the art side and the technical side at the same time. So I think that's all I have to say for this video, and I didn't want it to be this long, and I don't want to go on a rant or anything. I just wanted to answer these questions that seem to be coming up a lot. Thanks.